Good morning, Smithies. It's Grampy here again, and it's a Saturday morning in early October, and it's a beautiful, beautiful morning. And I had a couple minutes here, and there's just been an ongoing appreciation and emphasis in my own mind and in my heart and in many interactions that I've been, having lately on this topic of gratitude. And so I was flipping through the little dad talks that I have in this playlist, and I found that the very first one had to do with gratitude, particularly growth and gratitude. The correlation between our advancement and increasing fruitfulness in our Christian life and increasing in light and in understanding and everything like that, as it relates to gratitude. Particularly, that emphasis was in the face of like things that are disappointing in our experience with God, and how how there's a tendency, especially when we follow that Romans 1 decline, how we move from the God who is objectively true and real into a God of our own making, particularly because he doesn't deliver what we would want, what we think we should deserve, or what we expected of him, given what we would know about him. And in that case, in Romans 1, there's at least the minimal knowledge of God that's evident through creation. So we're really talking about the most essential levels of light that God gives us, that we are invited to respond to and to pursue and love. So I happen to be in a different conversation, or in a conversation with someone, and I was reminded of this passage in Ephesians 5. So I'm going to read it here. It says, "Therefore be imitators of God as dear children, and walk in love as Christ has also loved us and given himself for us, an offering and a sacrifice to God for a sweet-smelling aroma. But fornication," or sexual immorality, "and all uncleanness or covetousness, let it not even be named once among you, as is fitting for saints. Neither filthiness, nor foolish talking, nor coarse jesting, which are not fitting, but rather giving of thanks." And I want to just park on that final exhortation there, that final direction, right? So he sets the tone of the conversation, or the direction, the content, by saying to imitators of God, be like God, seek to be like him, seek to know him as your father, and seek to follow after him as dearly loved children. So it's in the loving heart of our Father God when he gives us these directions, right? How to live as his children. And he says to walk in love. Basically, love is the fulfilling of the law. And if there was one rule in our house, right, we would love one another. That was really that was the foundation. And if you had to strip away everything else from our home, my life, our lives that we were building as a family, it was, we will love one another. And that's really you can't get any more basic to that than, in the Christian life than that. So he said, walk in love, and these things should not be identified or marked in our lives. And some of them, he says, they shouldn't even be mentioned once, right? We shouldn't be seeing these things at all. And unfortunately, the fact that he had to say this means that they were there, right? But he's like, we need to see these, purged from our lives as children of light. But so here's the list of things that should not be, among us, right, in our behaviors. Sexual immorality, uncleanness, or covetousness, filthiness, nor foolish talking, nor coarse joking, which are not fitting. Okay? Now, there was a moment where I realized that of all of these negative things that he says shouldn't be in there, right? Or he's speaking of these things that in a negative sense, meaning we should be free from these things, right? We should get rid of these things if we're finding them in our lives. And in place of all of those things, I find this remarkable to be thankful, right? And I was thinking, like, well, he really made it easy, right? He started out by saying walk in love, okay? And then he kind of closes it up by saying to be thankful. And so, in so many ways, like whether it's our speech, whether it's our behavior, right? The answer is gratitude, right? And I was wondering, well, just recently, like, and I remember recognize this from a long time ago, and it simplifies a lot of things, right? We should just be thankful people all the time, and it's hard not to, at least, like, if someone is unthankful, if you think, right, it's not fun to be around people that are unthankful. They're whining, they're complaining, they're bitter, whatever it might be. But now think of this. If we take our little discussion back of Romans 1, where God doesn't meet our expectations, he doesn't deliver what we wanted, or we don't like what we're finding about him. You know what? The very same thing could be happening right here. And so we don't like the fact that God is telling us that he's got boundaries that he set around sexuality. Right? He said it's a good thing, but he said there's boundaries about it, and you ought to just keep it within my boundaries, and when you do, it's rich, it's good, right? But if you don't, I will judge that, right? And the same thing with uncleanness, covetousness, which other places says is idolatry, and then when you think of filthiness, foolish talking, or coarse jesting, which are not fitting. If we can just take this one solution of gratitude to each of those things, I think there's some keys that we can find there that really help bring God's love home and bring his provision home. So as those of us that have been a part of Thanksgiving Day blessings, right? I'm been known to give what the Bible word for Thanksgiving is in the original Greek, and it's the word Eucharisteo, right? Means to give thanks, or because it's the response to someone who is well, prefix you, and then charisto, the root would be charis, grace. I am a well-graced person. I have been given a gift that I didn't deserve from the goodness of my Father's heart. So, if we take an attitude of gratitude to these lists of sins and say, God, I realize you've placed boundaries about what I can do, what I should say, but I trust that you'll provide for me. I will trust you'll provide for my sexual desires. I trust you'll provide for my need for affirmation from people. Because why do people do foolish joking and stuff? They want to be liked, right? They want people to like them, and they want to be accepted. They want to find community and affirmation and things like that. God, I will set aside my need for satisfaction in this area. And I'm thanking you right now for how you've provided. God, I'm trusting you to meet my need in this area, and I'm thanking you for how you've provided. And if we would just go down this list here in this little context here, Ephesians 5, 1 through 4, and make that specific application to that particular sin that God is saying, let it go. Right? I've got it covered. I can meet that need, and I will, if you'll give up your concept of what right is in this area. And so this is to recognize the provision of God for all of our needs is at the heart of gratitude. Right? Whether it's sexual, whether it's covetousness, if it's financial, right? I've got to be accepting of how God is providing for me and not demanding more, right? So there is another little here, dad talk about how vital gratitude is. And this is not a little thing. I just see how this increasingly is at the heart of what it really means to live our lives as children of God with a sense of fruitfulness and hope and an abiding joy that even when he says no, right? How do we do when God says no? I thank him. I thank him because he's protected me from something else, and he's provided for that need in another way that brings no trouble with it, right? All right, so there we are. I will try and add a link in the description. You know how everybody points down to the description here to that first dad talk, so you can get 2 doses of dad talking about gratitude. All right, I love you guys. Have a great day.